We just got a massive update to the rules in Riftbound that changes the entire game. Let's go through the changes. Let's start with the biggest banger, which is right now allows you to mix the languages in your deck, which is good and is bad. The good thing is now accessibility is easier and also prices are higher. I mean, it's kind of funny because the Chinese cards were much cheaper, like even to some degree like 1/4 of the English price, but now they're gonna be almost at the same price, specifically now at this moment when people will be gearing up towards the regional opens in Las Vegas and Bologna. The biggest upside is of course accessibility, because now you're gonna be able to buy singles from the Chinese region to fill out your collection or maybe your decks that you want to compete with. Now you can read into this with few different reasonings from Riot why they made this change when they didn't allow it in the past, and is it good for actual competitive reasons. Randy over here shows you the difference between the English and the Chinese card. Now obviously English cards can also curve. If you leave them out in the open and they're gonna just slurp up all the water from the air, they're gonna curve. Like, that's just normal. But overall, the cardstock is different in the English and in the Chinese version, and there can be difference in how they are now visible in the deck even when double sleeved. Now that is a competitive problem. I don't know how it's gonna be solved, and I don't know how it's gonna be, you know, affecting players, but this is definitely a concern. Now, I always tell my locals to always have a habit of shuffling your opponent's deck after it's presented to you. Do not just cut it, shuffle it every single time, and I'm gonna be repeating this till my death. Always shuffle your opponent's deck, even if you play with a friend. Just make it a habit so you don't forget to do it, and then you go to a bigger tournament and there's a chance someone might be just stacking their deck without playing purple, you know. So shuffle your decks and your opponent deck. As I'm recording this, there's a huge buyout of the Chinese singles. They all rose in price from like 25% of the value of the English cards to now just almost being on par. Everyone wants to be prepared for Bologna and Las Vegas, so they order Chinese cards directly from the Chinese region as well. And people who had Chinese collections, like full Chinese collections of origins, are now smiling from ear to ear because suddenly the value of that collection spiked by like 100% or even more than 100%, and they, you know, paid way less for buying this entire collection in the past. So this is a big win for those people. Now, what I think about this is, why is this happening? I think Riot's changed their minds about this because of the backlash that the game was consistently getting about the lack of product that people have access to. And unfortunately, I don't think this fixes it completely. The reason why people are giving them backlash for the lack of product is because they didn't have the ability to buy the sealed product. Singles were widely available. They were pricey, yes, but I think still in range of, like, let's say traditional card games if you wanted to buy a competitive deck. Now the competitive decks are gonna be cheaper because there's gonna be much more singles, but the sealed product is still in the same position. So I feel like the casual players don't want to buy the Chinese cards, they don't want to play with cards that they don't understand, so they will still go for the English ones. But there are not gonna be more English cards right now when it comes to sealed product. You can see where I'm going with this, right? So this opens a little bit of a can of worms because we do compromise the competitive integrity. We do essentially now have a little bit of market manipulation because of this entire debacle over here. But it does only exist till we get the same release schedule up to expansion number 4. Once the release schedule from expansion number 4 will be the same in Europe, China, and NA, I think this problem disappears, because with the 4th expansion, I hope that the print runs are gonna be higher and the accessibility will be easier for us in NA and EU, but at the same time, people will not have the possibility of buying singles before the English release from China because they're gonna be simultaneous, and that essentially fixes the problem from the mixed languages from like expansion 4 and plus, but it still leaves the problem with the different card stock. And if they're gonna be, you know, a problematic situation for expansion 1, 2, and 3, because we're still gonna be using those cards, right? So that will then be fixed most likely with the rotation. But at the same time, someone can still just buy the order languages at any moment and manipulate their deck to make it a little bit, you know, more distinguished when it comes to which cards are which, so they can like have common, uncommons, and rares in English, and for example the epics or like the really important key pieces of a combo in Chinese, which will make it a little bit different even when sleeved, right? And that's potentially a competitive integrity. And even with the same release schedule of the future expansions, this gonna be still possible because you can just mix the languages, right? So it's gonna be frowned upon, I think, when you will see that a player has like the mixed languages only on like epics, for example, right? So in the future, I feel like this is a kind of ones that can never revert, because if they would revert now this rule at any point of the game, people will be upset because their collections, they're not going to be useful. Like essentially it's like banning the cards, right? So they can never change this back now. But there's also a possibility that maybe in the future, maybe Riot changes the way that they produce cards or who they produce the cards with, and they will unify the, let's say, quality control like over the entire of the print of every single language. Now, will that be true? I don't know. Is Riot changing this because they're unhappy with their current production? Maybe. This is just all speculation that I have. Absolutely, I'm just speculating here. This might have several different reasons, or it's a combination of amalgamation of all the reasons that we hear. The public outcry as well, people crying about the not having access to the sealed product. All of that is probably like affecting this decision. You also have to remember that there's already a precedence. With Proving Grounds, we actually have a reprint of Proving Grounds in a different factory, and the card stock is gonna be different with that product, which might mean that in the future, maybe the fourth expansion, maybe the third expansion, will be printed out in China, even in English. We don't know that. Maybe that's gonna be actually a thing. Will that be happening? I don't know. And this is again all speculation. I would hate though to see a decrease in the foiling quality, because the foils in the English version and the alt art were better in my opinion and more creative than the one in the Chinese version. But that's just like, you know, it's not as important as the overall accessibility of the game. So this is just me complaining about something that is not really that important. But overall, I think the quality of print that we currently have with Origins in the English language was fantastic, apart from the obvious edges that were, you know, not correctly cut out, and that was a big problem. But this is a interesting potential solution to the problems of the production that Riftbound has. I will just tell you this though, when it comes to the prices of the current Chinese cards, they are already today almost reaching the same levels as the English cards, because again, there's a huge demand for playable cards, and they are just a little bit cheaper now than the English ones, so there's still a reason to buy them. People are 100%, and I know that because I speak with people, looking for the Chinese cards directly now from China to get them before Bologna, right? So there's a huge spike in prices. What is gonna happen most likely is there's gonna be a buyout of the Chinese sealed product that is gonna be open now in English countries, so you know, in Europe and in North America. There's gonna be influx of the Chinese singles, which will be now then crashing overall economy prices of the overall like regions in EU and NA. So we should see a lower down price of all the cards, both English and Chinese, in the near future. But then once more sealed product from China is gonna be flooded into the European and American market, at some point the English cards, in my opinion, are gonna rise up in value, because not everyone will want to play with the Chinese cards in the future. And as I said before, I think this will all be not really that important once we have the release schedule being the same. But this entire language change is gonna be very curious for expansion number 3, because Chinese region is again having this expansion ahead of time, and I can guarantee you this will tank sales in Europe and NA when it comes to the third expansion, because people will import the Chinese version of the third expansion ahead of time. I know I will do it. I will definitely get either boxes or sealed content from the third expansion, so I can do box openings for YouTube earlier ahead of time and show it on stream, and also play without proxies on my local tournaments when we're gonna be preparing for the next expansion anyway. So that is gonna be a very peculiar spot, and it's gonna be detrimental for the sales, which is something that Riftbound definitely looks at, because it is a company. Like, this game is made for profit. It's not made for fun. It is made because Riot needs to make money with it, right? So I wonder how they will react to it. They definitely thought about this, because this is a huge decision. And as I explained before, they can never ever break this now. They always have to allow now all languages to be always available to everyone, right? So they will never revert this change, because the backlash would be so huge you could not imagine. If there's something that can kill a game, a reversal of this of this rule could be that. Like, they can never allow this to ever happen. So I think because of this, we're gonna see a unification of printing standards in the future. Maybe Riot is like, I don't know, maybe they're buying their own printing site or something like Pokemon does, right? Maybe that's a thing that Riot will do or is already planning, and because of that they're allowing it now, but it's still a band-aid for the production issues that we currently have. Overall, it's still a net positive for the community. It should be considered a big W for everyone who wants to play Riftbound, but at the same time, you will hear people still say, but bro, it's so expensive and I can't buy sealed product. I don't want to buy the Chinese cards. Just call it what it is. Call them an idiot. Like, just tell them to buy singles. Like, you already had access to singles all the time. Now they're just a little bit cheaper because we have the Chinese singles as well. But if someone will be still complaining about the accessibility of cards now, just literally call them an idiot. Like, there's no other way around it. But now let's talk about the third point from Dave Gaskin's tweet, which says Premier Tournament format switching to full Swiss cut to top 8 with highest seed getting first player choice in the top 8. Now this is in detail explained in the patch notes overall, but I'm gonna just give you like the rundown without actually reading the legal jibber jabber over here. So what does this do here is that essentially after the Swiss portion of the tournament, you will be cutting to top 8, and player that, for example, took the first place is in every single match that he's going to be playing in the top 8 from now, choosing if he wants to start. And this applies to other places as well. So in the top 8, the first place always plays against the 8th place, then the second place against the 7th place, and the second player will decide if he starts the match first or not. Third player will decide against the 6th player if he goes first or not, and then the 4th player will decide against the 5th player if he goes first or not. But then when we go to the top 4, we again check the seeding, the original seeding from the top 8. So the player who was originally highest seed in the top 8 will still get to decide if they're going first or second. I think this is a phenomenal change that I played Star Wars Unlimited before this game, right? The most. And we had that rule there, and it was deleted because the community was getting annoyed. I guess. I don't know. But anyway, FFG deleted that rule from Star Wars Unlimited, which made me really mad. Now, we getting this rule in Riftbound is a huge W for everyone who wants to have better competitive integrity, because now there's actually an incentive to be higher seed in Swiss. I actually do think this is a very big change, and we should maybe see a smaller amount of draws. Now, the problem is that you're gonna have to consider, like, do I want to have a guaranteed top 8, or do I want to play, not have a guaranteed top 8 and potentially go higher seed and have a advantage in the matches? And I think, unfortunately, if a player who can draw 2 rounds in a row, he's gonna still do it. But if it's gonna be about 1 draw, maybe not. So it's all about now deciding like how the system is gonna go forward. But overall, I think this is a great change. I would still love to see the double losses instead of the draws, but that's my personal opinion. But this change is phenomenal. I'm very happy to see it. The next point is also a big W for the community. Switch primary tiebreaker from game win percentage to opponent match win percentage. We have been complaining about the tiebreakers looking at your own game win percentage first instead of the quality of the opponents that you were playing. So overall, it was beneficial for you to win your games 2-0 rather than to win 2-1, and it was better for you to lose a match 1-2 than 0-2. This created a lot of really shady situations where people who were fighting, for example, for metal foil cards at big regionals were trying to convince the opponent to report like the win as a 2-0 instead of a 2-1 if it didn't matter to the opponent. Like, a lot of shady stuff was happening behind the scene that would still be happening if this wouldn't be changed. Overall, even if it's not about the shady things, this is just literally just a better and more fair options for everyone involved. So now it actually matters more that you play against good opponents and not that you're just breezing through your wins. That's essentially what it means. So it's like in every other card game. Great change. Fantastic that they're listening to the community about stuff like this as well. This is really good implementation. The third and the fourth point are phenomenally welcomed in the community. No game loss for forgetting to take your chosen champ out of your deck except at professional or organized play level, and you can sleeve your chosen champ in a different sleeve. Again, two great changes for the entire community, but specifically this is better for players who are new to the game because they might actually forget this a lot, and then they cannot be like, you know, abused by someone who wants to give them a game loss by having this problem, right? And also at a professional level, you don't just get some random losses because of that. I feel like it's still gonna be a little bit more lenient than it was now. Now, because you also can sleeve it in a different sleeve, you're gonna have that every player doing this. Like every player is gonna sleeve his chosen champion in a different sleeve. But you need to re-sleeve this champion if it enters your hand or your deck, right? So once that happens, you need to change the sleeve. And if you can't do that, there's gonna be a problem. There's definitely gonna get a warning. But overall, this will make it much easier to manage you always having your chosen champion in front of you at the beginning of the game, which will result in less negative experience for everyone involved. So great changes here as well. Next point is switched extra turns, so overtime rules, to 3 turns, and you need to be up to by 2 points to get the win. Now, you should read the entire patch notes for this. This is point 408. Everyone should be really accustomed to this. So first and foremost, the time limit of a round is 60 minutes now. 60, not 50, 60. I think this is a bad change, by the way, but that's my opinion. I think the rounds will be even longer because of that. With less overtime rounds, it's still gonna be longer rounds, or at least the same. So that's not a net positive change, in my opinion. And in the overtime rules, now we're gonna be playing not 0, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, which was not a good decision in the first place, but now we're gonna play 0 when the overtime is called, and then we're gonna play 1, 2, and 3 turns after that. Now, the problem is that for a player to win, you're gonna have to win by 2 points. If no one wins by 2 points at the end of that third turn, the game is a draw. Overall, I don't like this change because it will make players have even bigger paralysis when it comes to like how they approach the game, because now not only you have to think about how to play this overtime, you have to think, do I play for a win? Do I have to even chance at winning, or do I just force myself to play for a draw and play with the intention of drawing? I don't think this is a good decision. And also, this is the green point over here, additional turns are untimed, but at professional OPL level, a judge must be present to ensure a reasonable pace of the play. Like, how do you want to do this if there's gonna be like 50 tables? Like, do you have 50 judges available and at like a big regionals? I don't know if that's logical. And also at a lower level of play, but still like pretty decent, like let's say we have a local 120 player tournament and there's 10 or 20 tables that have overtime. There's no way a tournament like that has enough judges to all be present at every single judge table. So overall, my personal opinion, it's not a good decision to go for that. I would personally just go for 55 minutes and then 0 and 1 and end the game, but also double loss, or like 60 minutes and 0 and 1 and just end the game, and that's it. And there will be, it should be double losses, but that's my personal opinion. And if you want to listen to my full opinion about this point, there's a video already on my channel here when I'm talking about the changes to the overtime rules. So there's my full opinion there. I'm not going to be talking about the best of 1 changes because that's not something that interests me as well. I'm not going to waste time on that, but we're going to talk about this here. You have whole turn to get Arena's Greatest or Obelisk of Power battlefield triggers before they're missed. Fantastic. Lovely. Like, fantastic change. This should have been done this way from the beginning, but I really love the fact that they take the feedback into account, and now we just don't have to worry about missing the Arena's Greatest unless you pass the turn. I think this is reasonable. If you are playing Arena's Greatest and you forget to trigger it and you pass the turn, that's on you. That's fully on you. But if you forget to trigger Arena's Greatest or Obelisk of Power while playing your round, and then you're like, oh shit, forgot to add the point or to add the resource while playing your turn, I think that's reasonable. No change was in game like missed in that moment. It doesn't affect your the game in any negative way. It doesn't have there's no way to not reverse this, right? So this is a great change. Lovely to see. Specifically, this is actually good for all level of play, because newer players will definitely forget about this, right? But at the highest level of play, it's really bad to feel like you just lost a game because of a missed trigger of something that should have not been missed in the first place. 11th point is change sideboards from either 0 or 8 to 0 to 8. I'll be honest with you. I mean, it's reasonable to change this, but this doesn't really matter. Like, you could have just... I mean, it matters maybe, for example, if you, I don't know, lose a card at a lower level tournament and you suddenly have a seven card sideboard and you don't have any other card that you could put into the sideboard. I don't know. It's just funny. But the next point is actually pretty big. And the next point says, change deck size in limited to minimum instead of exact. Now, I think this is big for limited because sometimes you want to have more cards because it's just reasonable to have more cards in a limited deck if you just maybe are going to, like, you know, exertion of the deck. But I would love to have this change as well for constructed. The next 2 points are not really that important, but I will talk about something that I think is important. So change sideboards from either 0 or 8 to 0 to 8, which... I don't know. When does it matter? When you lose a card and you cannot exchange anything in your sideboard? Maybe at lower level events. I'm not sure I understand why is this being changed. Because at higher level events, you always have 8 cards anyway. But yeah, I digress. And then the 12th point, change deck size in limited to a minimum instead of exact. And I guess in limited, it's fine because you can play longer games and you can just exert your entire deck. Now, I think though, I would love to see a change in the constructed format because right now you have to present a 40 card deck. Like it's always 40 card deck. You cannot play more than 40 in your main, right? And then sideboarding is always a card for a card. So you always need to have 8 cards in your sideboard, right? So after making your sideboard changes, you should be able to present your opponent that you have 8 cards in your sideboard, and your opponent always can ask to see the sideboard. You don't have to see the contents, but you can see the amount of cards in the sideboard. If it's 8, if it's not 8, you should call a judge, right? So that's how it currently works. But how I'd like to see, like in other card games, you're able to actually sideboard cards to the deck without taking any out, so you could have more than 40. And in some cases, maybe decks should be allowed to have more than 40 because you're only getting yourself in trouble by having smaller chances of drawing what you want, right? But at the same time, and I've seen this happen in Star Wars Unlimited, there was not that big of a penalty by drawing, by having a deck with like 41 cards or 42. But at the same time, Star Wars Unlimited draws 2 cards per turn, so maybe that's the reason why. But anyway, the point is that I would love to see a little bit more freedom of choice for the players in this regard, but at the same time, it's no biggie. Overall, the rule changes here that we have in this patch, overall the changes are fantastic and I love to see them, and I think everyone benefits from them to some degree. Now, I'm also very happy to see that they are communicating this clearly, although I have to give feedback that I would like to see like color changes in this actual document so I know what changed. Because right now, running through this document without knowing exactly what was changed is a problem. So whenever we have an update to the rules in the documents, I would love to see a change log of what was changed, so I don't have to read the entire document to be certain that everything was done. This is, by the way, why Dave Gaskin's tweet was so needed, because otherwise you could miss something, right? So I hope they will change that in the future. But other than that, I am incredibly happy to see how transparent Riot is, and also how receptive Riot is with the feedback from the community, because a lot of the complaints were addressed here in this tournament update on the rules. So we should clap a little bit for Riot, because this is a great direction, and even though there will be some concerns about the Chinese cards, overall it's still a big W for the community, because more people will have access to more cards, which is a problem because the demand is so high, and the demand is so high because so many people want to play the game. It's not because of scalpers, I'm telling you. There are scalpers, I'm not saying they are not existing, but I'm telling you, the biggest problem is there's just so many people that want to play this game. That's the biggest problem, not the scalpers, right? And that's a good problem to have. And now hopefully all the people that complain about accessibility problems will not have this this being anymore an argument. But if they will use the argument, well, then I don't know what to say anymore. Anyway, thank you for watching. Let me know what you think in the comments. Bye bye, and don't forget to subscribe if you liked the video.